We're going to talk some Tennessee state politics because Brandon Lewis is joining me. He is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative, which you can read every day, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Yaffee. How are you?
Doing good. Are you preparing for this storm? Are you ready? You got some trees, got a bunch of trees around your house, so I hope you're ready.
I tend to sleep through all that stuff. My assumption is when it's my time, I'll just check out. So my wife on the other hand is always the one that's got the emergency preparedness strategy ready. So I defer to her judgment on the risk.
That's a good plan. Although I called my wife today and I was like, "Are we ready?" And she goes, "What are you talking about?" So I was like, "Oh no, we're screwed." But outside of that, I know you guys are covering this pretty well at the Tennessee Conservative. You have a story about how Governor Lee scores an F for failure to stop illegal immigration in the state. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's in keeping with surveys we've done previously that had 1,800 respondents, but this most recent one had 505 votes. And one thing your audience has to keep in mind is most people do not keep up with state politics. They watch Fox News, they know what's going on in D.C., yet they know very little about what's going on in Nashville. And essentially, 70% gave Lee an F, and it's primarily because he has been silent on this issue whenever there has been reform legislation brought to committees. He has sent down his staff to scuttle it, whether it's E-Verify, mass transportation, cutting off welfare benefits, etc. Because illegal immigration is a big business for corporations. It's cheap labor, and it's also consumers. And then there's another market that most people don't think about, and that's our largest government employer is schools. And so every time an illegal alien winds up in a Tennessee school, and I've got some interesting facts about some things that are going on at Howard that I think are reflective of other schools in Hamilton County, it's big business, right? It's $12,000 per kid. And so if somebody brings 3 kids, that school is going to see $36,000 more in funding. And so there's all these magnets, including Tim Kelly, putting together and facilitating nonprofits and government entities to give illegal aliens in Chattanooga free taxpayer services. And so all these magnets just continue to pull more and more illegal immigrants into Hamilton County.
So you're talking about the magnets. I think you're exactly right. Doesn't seem like the legislature is doing a whole lot, but what can the legislature do you think? Like, what are some specific ideas of laws that you would say pass as soon as possible?
Well, when somebody comes here illegally, they have 50 options of where to go. And what we need to do in Tennessee is be a national leader in making this an inhospitable state for lawbreakers. And the first one would be, in my opinion, compulsory E-Verify. If you are going to work in the state of Tennessee as a W-2 employee, we have to run you through a system to see if you are a citizen. Now, can that be gamed? Yes, but it would probably cut down on things 70, 80%. Taxpayer-funded education is huge. That is it is the number one most expensive benefit. And so if you are going to come to a state, and if you discover that Tennessee would not educate your children for free at Tennessee taxpayer expense, it's unlikely you would come here. And then the other 2 things we need to do is penalize companies like Delta, American Airlines, Greyhound, and other companies that are mass transporting illegal aliens into our state and into our county. And the last one would be any other benefits. We should not be paying housing. We should not be paying electricity or food benefits to folks that, with their first act of stepping on U.S. soil, is to break the law.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that. I'm speaking with Brandon Lewis. He is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Read more about that at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Now, we're talking about how it affects the business community and things they could do, laws they could pass. You mentioned E-Verify to prevent businesses from hiring them, so that would get rid of the incentive for them to come here in the first place and everything else. But you also have another story on your site about how non-citizens may be voting in Tennessee elections. Now, I would assume Tennessee elections are probably more secure than maybe states like California in this regard, but you said there's kind of a loophole here where maybe some non-citizens are voting in the state. What do you got?
So, U.S. citizens, are the only ones that are legally allowed to vote in Tennessee. However, there's no specific requirement for anyone to prove citizenship when registering to vote. And the state essentially leaves it up to people to be honest, be honest about your voting status. It's very similar to the situation we have with Democrats voting in Republican primaries. Very rarely that happens the other way around in Tennessee for obvious reasons. And neither does the Tennessee state constitution expressly forbid non-citizens from voting in elections. Although non-citizens were banned from voting in elections at the federal level when the U.S. Congress passed legislation in 1996, here in Tennessee, we have never specifically addressed that issue. And even if you put something in Tennessee code, Yaffee, if there's no enforcement mechanism, if there's no screening mechanism, then there's really no barricade between all of the illegal aliens that are being mass transported into our state and county to go show up on election day or to go down to the election commission and register. There are various forms of ID that you can present, and the state issues lots of IDs to people regardless of citizenship. So it would be very easy for anyone who's illegal to go vote in our elections here in Tennessee.
That's really concerning. Have you talked to any lawmakers about this?
Well, there have been laws that have been introduced on this very issue that have been scuttled. I think the most recent one was by Brian Ritchie. And what happens often when it comes to these election integrity reforms, the biggest obstacle to enforcing them is our own government. Your directors of elections in various counties are always complaining about the unworkability of doing their jobs to make sure that our elections are only being controlled by U.S. citizens. So whenever these laws are brought, all of the pro-illegal immigration lobbies come down, all of the government lobbies come down and talk about how unworkable it is, and if there's any kind of fiscal note, which there would be a little bit of a fiscal note to keep this from happening, often it gets put behind the budget, which is a death warrant for bills if they're not sponsored by the governor. And one other thing I might mention on that previous story, illegal immigration affects kids in Hamilton County. For example, when Lee put that huge covert illegal immigration center and authorized it in Tennessee Temple, kids were molested and lost until we reported on it, and it was shut down. You take Howard School, for example, they had about 600 to 700 students historically. Well, now they're up to around 1,600, and roughly 1,000 of those are Hispanic, and it's only happened in a short number of years. And it's highly unlikely that is a birth rate phenomenon. It is far more likely that is an illegal alien importation phenomenon. And so as kids are struggling already in schools like Howard with academic achievement in the 6 and 4 percentile for reading, math, etc., when you completely change the demographic with non-English speaking students and expect that our native students can compete and learn in those environments that are already struggling, I think it's just ridiculous. And it's harming our kids, it's harming our education system, the criminal justice system. But Tennessee lawmakers and even our delegation in Tennessee here in Hamilton County doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. I cannot recall, as long as I have been here, anybody in the Hamilton County delegation bringing legislation to address this, although I do have memories of them killing bills that would have stopped some of this stuff.
Yeah, and I know you had a story as well where one Representative Steve Cohen and 157 House Democrats voted against deporting illegal alien sex offenders. This was on the national level, but it kind of shows you I mean, this is a I mean, this is a problem on the national level, on the local level, everything else.
Well, I mean, to think about it, a bill gets brought, which is a shame that it even has to be brought. And bills like this, in my opinion, are really only devised so that Republicans can hang their hat on something that is really after the fact. And essentially the thing was the House, which I'm sure it won't pass in the Senate, and if it did, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden or whatever automaton they're putting out there, it would never sign this into law. But there was a bill to deport and make inadmissible criminal foreign nationals convicted of domestic violence and sex-related offenses. So child abandonment, neglect, abuse, stalking, violation of protective orders, rape, etc. And you could not get Democrats to vote for that. You could not get them to vote for it. And not only is it just reprehensible that we can't protect our own citizens from these violent folks, and we can't even pass a law after the fact, the question that I think everybody in the state of Tennessee should be asking is, why aren't we looking at preventative measures instead of reactive measures? Why are we waiting until somebody in our community is raped, murdered, or assaulted, which we report week after week that this is happening in Tennessee? The mainstream media, will not ever identify the immigration status of these criminals that they report on when they do report on them. We need to be more on the offense and less on the defense, and more on the prevention and less on the punishment.
I could not agree more, and it's kind of sad to see that there are things that we could do. I mean, that Republicans, we have a conservative legislature, things that they could do, but of course you have special interests involved, big business involved, and they all love that cheap labor, and Republicans, they fall victim to that as well. Brandon Lewis, he is with the Tennessee Conservative. You can read it, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, I always appreciate you coming on the show. I'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Yaffee. Talk to you soon.